Hi, this is Tim of the 1916 Company. Welcome and thanks for logging on. If you love this watch, email us Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase pricing and availability questions concerning this watch. And you will wish to concern yourself with this watch because this is part of that revered era of Breguet watchmaking when Daniel Roth was calling the shots and Francois Baudet was operating the company under the aegis of the Chaumet brothers. Based out of Le Sentier during this period, the company was much smaller than it is today. And the design language of modern-day Breguet was forged during this period by Daniel Roth. And of course, we mostly just call him Daniel Roth, not to be confused with David Lee. But the watch here is more a product of his eye and sensibility and design ethic than the Daniel Roth watches being sold today new. So this is a watch designed in the 1980s, and we're looking at one of the ultra-rare rose gold display caseback variants of the chronograph 3230. So this is called a 3237 with the display caseback. The 7 at the end on a Breguet of this period means a display caseback. 36 millimeters in diameter. In rose gold, you can see that the watch is relatively slender at only 10.2 millimeters thick and utterly short across the wrist at 43.6 millimeters with a 18 millimeter spacing between the lugs. You can also see between the lugs that this one features the hallmark that was employed prior to August 1st, 1995 on Swiss watches. So you could see that this is well pre-Swatch ownership, and that hallmark would have been used on the early 90s and 1980s Breguet watches. It's the one off to the left. That is the head of the woman, the Helvetic head. The watch is easy to wear on the wrist, though let me warn you, this is a brand new strap, so it's very stiff. So I'm going to have to pull it tight, and it's going to exaggerate the size of the watch and create the perception that my wrist is much smaller than it is. This wears beautifully. Anyone can wear this, man or woman. You can see it easily slides under a cuff, over the top, even pulling the stiff strap tight. It'll break in, but for now it's stiff. You can still see the lugs are inboard of the edge of my 16 centimeter wrist. And then down the barrel, which is always the definitive shot, you can see the lugs are well inboard again. Men, women, wrists as small as 13.5 centimeters, ready to rock. The watch features a medium rectangular scale alligator strap with a folded edge, a monotone stitch, a little bit of stuffing or bolstering, semi-gloss finish. It's reddish brown on the bottom. You can see it has a calfskin lining, brand new Breguet factory strap. You can see right here. Once again, the pre-August 1st, 1995 hallmark on the deployant clasp. Breguet branded, rose gold like the watch. Friction fit with a snap-shut action. And then you can see that the strap is held to the buckle using a screw and a bar. And the strap is held to the case using a screw and, and a bar. This setup is more secure than a spring bar. I've seen spring bars in place for years suddenly pop out with no warning given and disaster resulting. So on an expensive watch, I love to see screws and bars. You can also see that this is the type of case coining that Breguet used to achieve by cold rolling the case and then hand finishing it in a jig to get a clean coined flank. The lugs welded into place and then filed by hand to remove evidence of the weld, creating that super sharp break between the case flank and the pastille style lug. That's something that can be achieved only by hand welding and filing. So this is an extensively handmade case. It is an example of the case maker's craft and art. That's before we even get to the dial and the movement. You can see very traditional in those days. Many Breguet watches from the period either feature a cabochon on the crown or no branding, as traditionally that's how crowns would be made. You can also see there's a little kerf under the crown, as they anticipated you might want to stick your nail in there to pull the crown out. They really thought of everything. The mid-case defined by the overlapping flange of the caseback and the bezel, which is domed. And then the dial is made of solid gold, and then it's silvered to create the dial you see here. But before it is silvered, it's cut on lathes to create the hobnail pattern that you see at center, the pyramide, also the vague or the wave pattern that you see in the sub-registers, and then les dents, or the dental pattern outboard. So several lathe cuts before this piece of gold, and it is solid gold, gets silvered to look like a Breguet dial. Taking a quick look, you can see that the hands are all fired steel to achieve that lovely blue. And then around the back side, Breguet during this period had a strong relationship with Lemagne, and later on, both of them would be sold by the company Investcorp, which bought Breguet from the Chaumet brothers, and Lemagne and Breguet would become one company and fully integrated as a manufacturer. But back then, many companies in the haute de gamme were still using the Lemagne 2310 column wheel chronograph movement. Everyone from Patek Philippe to Vacheron Constantin, Roger Dubuis in its classical period, and of course Breguet. And so we have that Lemagne 2310 Bausch here, which remember in a different form as Omega's 321 went to the moon, but here we have it in aristocratic form. So manual wind, 5 beats per second, 18,000 vibrations per hour, overcoil hairspring, 5-position adjustment, column wheel with a lateral clutch, and it has one of the sweetest feeling and sounding column wheel actions in the business. 21 pivot jewels, 27 millimeters in diameter. Remember, Patek Philippe called this the CH27 for a reason. You could see that the finishing is strictly Breguet. Satination on the tops of the steel chrono components with beveling on the side. Côte de Genève on the bridges with beveling, predictably, broad and hand finished on the side. Noted also in the screw and jewel countersinks. Wheels satinated, screw heads mirror finished with chamfered slots and circumference, column wheel, center mounting screw, and crenellated towers mirror finished, black polished and beveled steel swan's neck fine adjustment mechanism, the overcoil ensuring, due to its concentric breathing and centered mass, that in any position it will keep consistent time. That's the idea of using an overcoil, and a feature very rarely seen on modern watches. See that little needle projecting from the regulator, from the curb pins? That's called a hooking guard, and it's designed to prevent an overcoil hairspring from getting hung up on the regulator under conditions of shock. It beats at 18,000 vibrations per hour, which means when the chronograph is running, we have that nice slow chug-a-chug you associate with a pocket watch, and it is quite beautiful. You can also see here we have instantaneous jumping minutes on the chronograph register, one of the best features of this movement. And then in theory, in its day, it was 30 meters water resistant, but I beg you, don't test the theory. This is now a vintage watch and deserves to be treated as such. And the finishing, though not Geneva hallmark, remember these were made in the Vallée du Jeu, so they were not eligible for the Geneva seal, but I can tell you that Vacheron's version is finished no better. And frankly, there are a lot more Vacherons than there are Breguet 3237s. In rose gold, with the pre-1995 hallmarks and a display case back, this is the Breguet chronograph as Daniel Roth envisioned for the modern era. Reach out to Team Mosso at the1916company.com for purchase and pricing details.